everybody, how's it going? It's Mike with the Ongoing Restoration. Hope you're doing well. So I want to talk about Helaman, that same Helaman that led the stripling warriors into battle at the relief of the Nephite armies, and how incredible that was. Just to kind of understand better Helaman's background, I actually went to those two chapters in Alma, chapter 36 and 37, where Alma's talking to his son Helaman. Right before he gives him the plates and says, "Hey, I'm putting you in charge of these, and let me give you the ground rules. Let me tell you what all, as far as responsibility and duty and everything else that's involved in maintaining the plates." He was also handed the Jaredite record, the interpreters. He was given the brass plates. I would imagine he was also given the Liahona, because his father Alma talked to him about that. And which the Liahona and the brass plates and the sword of Laban, that was originally handed down to all the different Nephite kings, and it was symbolic of authority and power. After King Mosiah put an end to the reign of kings and initiated the reign of the judges, Alma, the younger, being the first chief judge, I believe that's where all of those relics were handed down after being in possession of Nephite kings. And Helaman receiving the plates and the Liahona, the interpreters, would have also received the sword of Laban. And he's given some counsel from his father in chapter 37. In a few verses, Alma tells him what he needs to preach and teach to the Nephites as well as the Lamanites. Alma explains to Helaman that because of the record of the Nephites and the brass plates, the Lamanites were able to come to a knowledge of their Creator and of the gospel, and because of the teaching and preaching of Ammon and his brothers, they were converted. And so Helaman would have had that history at the forefront of his mind, and it's interesting that as the people of Ammon are observing the Nephites being slaughtered, that Helaman is the one that encourages them to maintain that covenant, not to shed blood anymore by the sword or any other weapon, because of his relationship with the people of Ammon, and strongly urging them to maintain that covenant. Their sons, the stripling warriors, were the ones that appointed Helaman to be their leader in battle, as they took on a covenant like unto their fathers, where instead of making a covenant not to fight, these young men made a covenant to fight, and they were valiant in that covenant. But Helaman was not a military guy. He was given charge by his father. Let's see, it would have been 10 years prior to Captain Moroni's encounter with Zarahemna, where Helaman started his ministry, more or less, among the Nephites, preaching and teaching and baptizing. Here he comes back around to where the people of Ammon are, and all of a sudden he finds himself leading the stripling warriors. But he wasn't entirely ignorant. I'm sure, possessing the sword of Laban, he would have had some knowledge and some skill, and would have been taught how to protect his people. I've been pondering what Captain Moroni's relationship was with Helaman. They had to have had a pretty strong relationship, and Helaman leading an army to assist the Nephites. He was obligated, and he was compelled to let Captain Moroni know what was going on. I think at one point they find themselves, even though they've been spared in a lot of the battles, they find themselves kind of spent of their energy and fatigued. And despite all of the things that they've struggled with, these young men are still faithful and valiant, and still acknowledging God as the one who's delivered them from their enemies and the conflicts that they had faced. And it's just really fascinating to ponder that. I'm so grateful for the Book of Mormon. I'm grateful for all of the history and the accounts, the stories of faith and courage that exist. It really gets me thinking a lot about, how I can be inspired by Captain Moroni's influence, and especially Helaman's. For these young men to just volunteer Helaman to lead them to battle, it's pretty incredible. Helaman felt just a huge burden of responsibility, taking these young men to assist and aid, like the army of Antipas, when they were leaving, or I think they were guarding the city of Judea after they had arrived. The Lamanites, I think passed by that city once or twice and kind of got spooked a little bit, because they weren't anticipating, this extra strength provided by the stripling warriors, and so they decided not to come against the city of Judea. And they were like, well, we're just gonna hunker down in these cities that we have captured and try and maintain them. Well, Antipas and Helaman had to strategize the best way that they could to draw out the Lamanites. So, because they knew that if they tried to approach the Lamanites in one of these fortified cities, that they were going to get destroyed. So that's when they came up with that plan to have the stripling warriors march out of the city of Judea, kind of towards the city of Antipara, with their provisions to kind of lure the Lamanites away, because the Nephite armies were being strengthened by the provisions that were arriving for the stripling warriors as well as the other Nephite soldiers, and they were like, we got to do something about this, otherwise they're just going to keep growing stronger day by day, and before we know it, we're going to get slaughtered here. So I think they were licking their chops and saying, yeah, we got to do something about this, and that's ultimately what caused the Lamanites to be drawn out of the city of Antipara, because they were chasing after Helaman and his army, and Antipas kind of fell behind and was chasing the Lamanites from behind, and I think this pursuit lasted 2 or 3 days, until Helaman and his stripling warriors were like, well, I guess we're not being followed anymore. And Helaman's like, okay, well, we don't know what's going on back there, but what do you guys want to do? He did not want to put his soldiers in harm's way, but they were so faithful. They were like, look, this is what we came here to do, and we made a covenant to defend and protect the Nephites. So we have faith that God will deliver us. And it was because of the faith of their mothers that they were able to, just be undaunted. So they turn around just in time, because Antipas and his men had put a beating on the Lamanites, but they were exhausted just as much from the chasing after the Lamanites. So they start getting exhausted, and at the point where they're about to just surrender, here come Helaman and the stripling warriors. And unfortunately, Antipas had fallen by the sword, and so did quite a few others. I'm sure it was more than a few. A significant number of Nephite soldiers had been slain. But because of Helaman and his stripling warriors, the survivors, the surviving Nephite soldiers, were not taken captive. They weren't taken prisoner of war. In fact, the Lamanites that weren't slaughtered by the stripling warriors, they were the ones that survived. A part of them were taken prisoner of war, and with the soldiers of Antipas who had survived, were marched into the city of Zarahemla, while the remainder who were not taken, who were Lamanites, Helaman must have convinced them to make a covenant, because they end up making a covenant similar to the stripling warriors to fight in defense of liberty and the Nephites and the Nephite land. And so Helaman's army just grew bigger at that point. That's pretty impressive. The fact that they didn't, see, Helaman was just like Captain Moroni. He wasn't bloodthirsty. And he obviously saw an opportunity when the Lamanites came to a point where they were like, okay, we're done, we surrender. They waving their white flag. Helaman placed them under covenant, and they joined themselves to the stripling warriors, to the sons of Helaman, and that's pretty incredible. That's a detail I feel like is easy to overlook. But how often do we find ourselves in conflict where we're able to resolve that and make a peaceful resolution with those who in one moment we might perceive to be our enemy? That's pretty incredible. That's one heck of a war strategy, and I think that's an amazing story. That Helaman, that's the first letter or first epistle that we get from Helaman in the book of Alma about leading the stripling warriors in battle. So I would encourage y'all to keep studying your scriptures, especially the Book of Mormon, as we continue Come Follow Me this year. Why don't you share in the comments maybe a favorite story of yours? I know a lot of people will say that the war chapters are pretty hard to process emotionally, mentally, and but there's also a lot of good lessons that can be learned from the war chapters. What are some of your favorite lessons? Please include that in the comments, and I'll talk to you later.